Durkheim's all books are interrelated and interdependent on each other for a holistic understanding of society as a sovereign, autonomous, sui generis whole. I will repeat, Durkheim's all books are interrelated and interdependent on each other for a holistic understanding of society as a sovereign or autonomous or sui generis whole. Together, his works represent sociological classics which have survived lethal criticisms over more than 100 years. His books display several features of a classic in European sense of the term. They contain and confront a range of fundamental issues, methodological, substantive, and normative, all old issues, but in a new, bold, systemic, and visionary way. What survives the critical scrutiny in his texts are of compelling interest, continuing to animate and innovate sociological thinking and research in various fields. His first two books, namely The Division of Labor in Society and The Rules of Sociological Method, propounded a theory of social realism and a rejection of methodological individualism propounded by many people, including Max Weber. He equated the concepts of social with moral in the study of collective beliefs and sentiments as representations collectives. Now, in English, the term moral is much more restrictive than the French term moral, and Durkheim is writing in French language. Therefore, there is no confusion in students who are reading the French original or relying on the new translations in 1982 and 1984. Durkheim claimed in the division of labor that the morphological or demographic factors of population. Morphological represents the volume and demographic represents the density of population. I will repeat. Durkheim claimed in the division of labor that the morphological or demographic factors of population. I have already said morphological means volume of population and demographic means density of population, are central to the causes and conditions of the developing division of labor in West European societies around the late 18th century. But Durkheim also added that the active factors of the new changes in morphology and demography are communication and commerce. In other words, volume, that is morphology, and density, that is demography of population, are central social facts of developing organic solidarity, but communication and commerce, that is business in the market, but communication and commerce among the intersubjective relationships represent dynamic density or collective representations of the same social facts. In contemporary sociological language of 21st century, division of labor in society has two dimensions: the structural and the symbolic. The structural in the sense British social anthropology defines a structural functionalism primarily in the writings of A.R. Radcliffe Brown and in American sociology by people like Talcott Parsons, R.K. Merton, Louis Koger, Reinhard Benedicts, etc. Symbolic in the sense it is used by the second and third generation European sociologists like Claude Lévi-Strauss, Roland Barthes, Louis Dumas. In America, Clifford Geertz. Also, people like Lacan, Derrida, and many others. Therefore, we can say with confidence today that even after more than 100 years, the classics Durkheim wrote between 1893 and 1912. As you know, he died in 1917, are still relevant for students who follow a structural functionalism, who follow French structuralism, who follow post-structuralism, who follow semiotics, who follow semiology. These terms may be difficult for you today. Please make a note of these concepts, namely morphology, demography, mechanical solidarity, organic solidarity, structural functionalism, symbolic sociology, semiotics, and semiology. It will be clarified next week. We are planning a tutorial next week exclusively devoted to your questions and answers. And in case you are not satisfied, then a full lecture can be given on the key concepts we have used so far in our lectures. Now, in division of labor, at least in the first edition published in 1893, Durkheim was presenting a structural explanation of moral phenomena. He argued that restitutive law, again a technical term which will be clarified next week, he argued that restitutive law replaced penal law, again a technical term. Restitutive law replaced penal law as European societies moved from morphological forms rooted in relationships between people having similar positions in the kinship network or tribal villages or medieval towns. In the process of production of morphological forms characterized by higher degrees of dissimilarity of cultural, social, technical, and religious background. As a result, they, that is, people of organic solidarity, developed new institutional relations and moral ideals or moral and legal systems of thought. I will repeat. As a result, people of organic solidarity developed new institutional relations and moral ideals or moral and legal systems of thought as collective representations of new social bonds. Now, he wrote in between many articles in a journal called Any Sociologic. He founded and edited it since 1898 till his death in 1917. These articles are today easily available with good translations to understand Durkheim through English language the way he should be understood on the basis of his original writings in French as well as Hebrew. Now, I will summarize his theoretical understanding of individual and society. Collective consciousness and collective representations as concepts. Collective consciousness and collective representations as concepts have been derived by Durkheim from Russian concept that is Rousseau's concept of general will and Auguste Comte's concept of consensus that binds people in their mechanical solidarity. Unlike Marx, tonnage, and Spencer or Main, for new students, Karl Marx, Ferdinand Tonnage, Herbert Spencer, and Henry Maine. Unlike them, Durkheim did not believe that organic solidarity will have no commonness of beliefs and sentiments. As a result, collective consciousness would inevitably decay. In other words, Karl Marx, Ferdinand Tonnage, Herbert Spencer, and Henry Maine believed that industrial society in late 18th century and 19th century is moving from community to society, as Tony said, or from pre-industrial society to industrial society, as Marx said, or military society to commercial society or industrial society, as Herbert Spencer said, or from society based on social status to a society based on social contract, as Henry Maine said. There will be no collective consciousness, no collective representation, no moral cohesion. Instead, there will be a struggle, there will be disagreements, there will be pathological relationships, there will be enemy in society, and it will require, according to Marx, a socialist revolution. It will require, according to Herbert Spencer, a state intervention. It will require, according to Henry Maine, some coercion on the part of the higher authorities. Unlike them, Emile Durkheim was neither pessimistic nor a revolutionary. He was a liberal conservative or social realist, or a pragmatic sociologist who believed that mutual dependence of people engaged in different yet complementary rounds of life will give rise to a different type of collective consciousness and collective representations through the medium of secondary institutions like professional corporations and professional associations, including formal educational institutions, to cement the social and moral bonds between autonomous individuals of different backgrounds. Here, he was deeply influenced by French philosopher Saint Simon. In English, he is pronounced as Saint Simon, and Auguste Comte or Auguste Comte, who believed that critical periods of transformations brought some turmoil, but it was not devoid of new healthy forces. Now, there are certain technical terms which I have used. It will be discussed next week so that you also read on your own the original book, The Division of Labor in Society, the book which is a compulsory reading for you. In case you are unable to understand it, we will discuss these terms in the tutorial, and if the need arises, in the next lecture. Now, I am repeating the same quotations which I had shared yesterday at the end of the class. Besides these points, I will also summarize different quotations from Durkheim for your ready reference as a serious student of MA first semester. I had given the quotations from a book which is not mandatory for you to read, namely Primitive Classification, written by Marshall Moss with his uncle Emile Durkheim in 1903, 1 year after Durkheim revised the division of labor in society. Now, one major, revision which Durkheim made in the second edition was a concept which he was very certain in the first edition. Namely, in the first edition, Durkheim was very certain that the European society is undergoing through an evolutionary change which can be studied as social facts by following the method of physics, like Newton studied the physical world or the material world. In the other course on methodology of social sciences, you are being taught about these different methods to study society. But what makes the second edition interesting is his revision of the concept penal law. Now, in the first edition, he said categorically that in mechanical solidarity there is a repressive penal law. In other words, in case a crime is committed by a fellow member, it hurts the collective consciousness, in French, collective conscience, so much that he is heavily punished. He is definitely given a penalty. He is replaced so that he dare not repeat the same crime again. This penal punishment, this penal law is also necessary as exemplary act so that others who are witnessing the repressive punishment dare not repeat the same mistake or same crime again. In other words, the penal law or repressive law in mechanical solidarity is both a punishment to a fellow member by the whole society, the whole clan, the whole lineage, the whole tribe, so that the collective self of mechanical solidarity is not legally, morally, or culturally disrupted. On the other hand, Durkheim said that there is no need, no necessity of penal law or repressive law in industrial society, which is termed by him as organic solidarity. Rather, restitutive law or less harsh form of law will be sufficient to maintain social solidarity or moral equilibrium in the autonomous, individual centric, organic solidarity. But in the second edition, Durkheim is ready to consider that restitutive punishment is not absent in mechanical solidarity as well. In other words, he revised his theory that anywhere, if there is a traditional society, a mechanical solidarity, there has to be a penal law, a repressive law. Need not be the case. Alongside with the penal law, there is possibility of existing restitutive law in mechanical solidarity as well. Therefore, after the second edition of mechanical solidarity and organic solidarity in his book, The Division of Labor in Society, published in 1902, he comes up with a new book with his nephew Marshall Moss, Primitive Classification, in 1903. The first point, which I had already shared yesterday, but since officially I had only 90 students until yesterday, and yesterday I got a list of 108 students, I am repeating the points again. Men classified things, human beings classified things because they were or they are divided into groups or clans. Second point, the model of all classification is the society. The third quotation, society is the unique whole or totality to which everything is related. Fourth quotation, the classification of things reproduces the classification of men. Fifth quotation, primitive classifications generated the first concepts or categories enabling men to unify their knowledge. Sixth quotation, it constituted the first philosophy of nature. Seventh quotation, indeed classifications, the origins of logical procedure are rooted. The procedures are the foundations of scientific classifications. Now, this I had already shared yesterday. Now I am adding from 1915 first edition, the elementary forms of religious life, some quotations which are necessary to understand the division of labor in society, the second edition. Quotation 8, not from the same book, but from the book, The Elementary Forms of Religious Life. The elementary religion is that of totemic clans. It contains the germs of all essential elements of religious thought and life. Ninth quotation, the reality underlying religious practice is society itself. 10th quotation, religion is above all a system of ideas by which individuals represent the society they belong to. Now, quotation ends, but I will add, in this book, The Elementary Forms of Religious Life, about which I will give separate lecture later on, Durkheim has not studied religious belief of the Arunta tribe of Australia. Rather, he said that as a sociologist, we should concentrate on religious practices or rituals. Here you find the contrast with Max Weber. Max Weber, in the so-called Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, had studied religious beliefs and religious systems. On the other hand, Emile Durkheim studied not religious beliefs but religious practices. Therefore, there is a contrast of method, there is also contrast of theory formation. As I said in one of the classes, methodology is in the middle of theory and data. There is technique of data collection, which is rooted in methodology of social sciences, but there is also a method of theory construction. In other words, unlike data and theory, unlike technique and theory, technique of data collection and theory, methodology is a two-sided game. From one side, you collect, tabulate, and classify data. From the same methodological apparatus, you construct a theory. Therefore, how Durkheim wrote his books, please try to understand his style of theory construction. First, he proposes a hypothesis in the division of labor in society, and then he provides you a method, new rules of sociological method, and then he wrote suicide. Now, most students and teachers are usually confused because of the wrong translations they rely upon, that Durkheim had given a theory of suicide. No, he never gave a theory of suicide. Rather, he gave a theory of suicide rate in a particular society or particular solidarity. He said explicitly, suicide as individual phenomena cannot be studied by sociologists. We have no theory, we have no method, and we have no technique to study suicide as individual phenomena, as an individual commits a suicide. It is beyond our professional boundary. This is beyond the sociological boundary. It can be either studied by a criminologist or by a psychologist. It cannot be studied by a sociologist. But he asserts in the third book that definitely we can study the annual suicide rate in a particular society, and then we can give a theory of suicide rate. This theory will give us insight to understand the moral cohesion found in that society, in that year, and that space. We will come to that later. At the moment, we are only concerned with some other quotations which I will try to finish as fast as possible because time is running up. Religion, 10th quotation, is above all a system of ideas by which individuals represent the society they belong to. But as sociologists, we should focus on the ritual aspect or a religious behavior. What is the contrast in Weber and Durkheim? Max Weber is interested in economic action. Max Weber is interested in economic action and social action, but religious belief. On the other hand, Durkheim is primarily concerned with religious action or religious behavior, but economic belief. In other words, Marx and Weber may be contradictory to each other. Weber and Emile Durkheim are complementary to each other primarily from the perspective of Talcott Parsons, Louis Koger, and Stephen Lukes. 11th quotation. The religious representations are metaphorical and symbolic. 11th quotation again, religious representations are metaphorical and symbolic, but they are faithful to social facts and social reality. 12th quotation, the type of religion is determined by social structure. 13th quotation, the cult of the great God corresponds to the synthesis of all totems and to the unification of the tribe. 14th quotation, religion is the foundation of symbolic language to represent or interpret social realities. 15th quotation, This symbolic language is called mythic language. 16th quotation. Mythologies connect things in order to fix their internal relations, to classify and to systematize them. 17th quotation. Myths represent reality in the same way in which science represents reality. 18th quotation. The function of religion is ultimately social integration by constantly producing and reproducing the soul of the collectivity and of individuals. 19th quotation. Symbolism is the very condition of social life. It helps social communication to become communion, or, as Durkheim writes, the fusion of all particular sentiments into one common sentiment. 20th quotation. Durkheim's religious sociology had an immediate public appeal in the ongoing conflicts between the Church and the Republic of State in France. This is not a quotation from the elementary forms. This is a quotation from Louis A. Kozer's introduction. 21st quotation from Stephen Luke's. Durkheim adopted a formal scientific posture while offering a historical criticism and a sociological evaluation of contemporary religious institutions. He once described the Catholic Church as a sociological monster. This he wrote in 1905 in one of his articles in Annex Sociology. 22nd quotation. Durkheimian sociology. This is again from Stephen Luke's, who wrote Durkheim's life and works, his autobiography, rather a biography based on autobiographical writings. Durkheimian sociology, together with his followers and debating partners, Levi Bruhl, Marcel Mauss, Henry Hubert, and Hertz, reformulated French social anthropology, sociology. Both writers, Stephen Luke's and Louis Kozer, write French social anthropology and sociology as if both are the same thing, although there are differences between the two sciences. I am quoting Stephen Luke's Durkheimian sociology, together with his followers and debating partners, reformulated French social anthropology and sociology between the two world wars, First World War and the Second World War. 23rd quotations, again from Stephen Luke's. Durkheimian sociology never broke with the other social sciences and retained a penchant for high-level generalization. And now two quotations from Rules of Sociological Method. The sum total of parts is not equal to the whole. And 25th and last quotation, Again from Rules of Sociological Method, a certain percentage of crime is normal. A certain percentage of crime is normal. These are the major Durkheimian formulations or major commentaries about Durkheimian sociology, which consist of the 5 major works he wrote: The Division of Labor in Society, first; Rules of Sociological Method, second; Suicide, third; The Elementary Forms of Religious Life, fourth; Professional Ethics and Civic Morals, fifth; and the 6th book is jointly written with Marshall Moss, Primitive Classification. I have given today a summary of Durkheimian theory of the individual and society. From next, I will give lectures on the 5 books one by one. Thank you.